Welcome back to Normies Like Us, the podcast that reminds you it's hip to be square. This week, you can stand under my umbrella corporation because we're talking Resident Evil. There has been a biohazard outbreak in Racoon City, so join us as RPD rookies reaching for the stars as we break down the games, movies, and comics that spawned the survival horror late 90s craze. Grab your lockpick, load up on some green herbs, and save ribbons as we helicopter in for an episode that is sure to be itchy and tasty.
You're a cop, right?
Yeah, first day on the job.
What are you buying? S.T.A.R.S.
You were almost a jibble sandwich.
You're right.
You're all going to die down here.
Ayo Normies, welcome into Racoon City. We're here talking Resident Evil. This is Special Agent Mike.
Nemesis Joe.
Okay.
And Colin, and I'm just full of the T-virus.
Oh,
I'm like very sick.
I'm just real sick, Colin.
Yeah, I'm bulging
Colin,
up.
but super sick.
He's got real high T, dude. Well, you know, Resident Evil, right? Let's preface this here. It's a survival horror game series created by Capcom, starting with the 1996 Resident Evil, spinning off tons of games, probably at least 20 of them, not counting just mainline. Then the film series with Mila Jovovich. And there's a ton of comics and books and literature related to that. So.
Hell yes, and that's the reason it is perfect for Halloween week 2 here on Normies Like Us,
right.
guys.
Horror week, we are back. I want to ask you guys, what's your history with Resident Evil? What's your background? Did you first play it? Have you played them at all? And how many, etc.? Or the movies, you know?
Played a handful of the games. PlayStation 1, first experience.
Mm-hmm.
My brother had a PlayStation 1, snuck into his room, played... I think it was Resident Evil 2 was the first one I played.
The one in the city with Leon.
Mm-hmm. I think that was my first experience.
Okay.
And then we played a handful of them. Colin and I went through Resident Evil 6 at one point. Yeah.
That's good because as we get to the video game section a little bit later here, 6 is the one I have the least line on. So I'll be appreciating if you guys can bring us up for that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I'll tell you my history. Resident Evil 2, same as Joe. Was the first game I played. I don't know why the first one skipped. Maybe it was because my brother and I we had a PlayStation, but it was just the idea of, I guess, to sit around and get scared by a game wasn't necessarily what we were doing. We were playing like Cyber Sled and stuff and just trying to like blow the shit out of each other.
Horror games were not very normie at all. When
Not
the
at
Resident
the
Evil
point,
series
no.
was
No.
coming
You would
out.
just kind of read a lot about it in Game Informer. Like, I knew the lore of Resident Evil just even before I started number 2. You know, even before I got my hands on the game.
And like mascot platformers were like the taste of the year. Like that's what it was. Sonic, Mario leading that into Crash Bandicoot.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I knew stuff
Yeah.
about Crash Bandicoot with, again, ever picking up a game. You know, again,
Yeah.
I don't know if it was these magazines that were just supplementing so much information back in the day, but it worked on me.
And as we talked about in the horror episode, horror video games were kind of relegated to the PC and those full motion video games. And then Resident Evil came out and literally created the genre, created the survival horror.
Resident Evil and Silent Hill. I mean, I would say PlayStation just fucking cornered the market. There was nowhere else you were getting these types of games.
And it
Sony
proved that there's
Interactive.
demand. Yeah.
You were not getting these on the Nintendo 64
No, they
or
weren't going to
anything
scare
like
the
that.
shit
No.
out of you. It was for babies.
Yeah. This was real adult entertainment. It's scary. It's mature. It's R-rated. And I loved it. My first one I played, and I was, younger than the recommended age, but my older cousins had them playing Resident Evil 1. And there's a very iconic scene where you first see a zombie, you go down the hallway, cuts to a video of this guy hunched over, you don't see what's going on, and then he turns the camera and half of his
That's
face
right.
is decayed, and it was like really bad graphics probably at the time, but for me, that was so scary. Like, oh, dude, that's a zombie. Like, I was terrified, and just watching my cousins play through that, then I ended up playing through 2 and Nemesis. I've played all of them except for 6 and 7, but I've watched playthroughs of 7, so I know what it's about. But yeah, I love the games, the movies. Saw those all. I saw the first 3 and then kind of gave up on them too because it was.
But you were playing the games before that.
Yeah.
I don't think my dad knew anything about the movies, but he was certainly the one taking us to them. And we were playing the games before that. But again, it wasn't really even just the connection like I thought as a kid. Fuck, I cannot wait for the Resident Evil movie. That's not really what it was about. or the fact that it was like a video game adaptation. Again, that's just not something that was really marketed back in the day. It was just
another
a horror
movie.
movie. Yeah, exactly. It was a haunted house film specifically. You know, they would just show you the opening shots of Mila Jovovich and her boyfriend locked up there. So I don't know.
Being scared.
But Mike, you know, that feeling that you had playing that first game, seeing that face turn, I'm sure that's how people felt watching the pilot of Walking Dead on Halloween. You know, I'm sure some 10-year-old out there saw the exact same thing. Or me as a kid seeing Dawn of the Dead in theaters and just being like, what the fuck? You know, and just getting freaked out.
Yeah, that's like right when Resident Evil, that's when I first saw Dawn of the Dead on VHS. Like we were on the zombie mode that whole summer.
Right?
Yeah. Also, you know, influences and legacy. You know, it's influenced by the George Romero movies and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, without the Godfather of zombies, there'd be no zombie games.
That's right. So,
and these aren't, you know, Jamaican zombies.
Yeah, they're not Jamaican voodoo slaves.
Yeah,
they are, you know.
They're embracing the idea
the Western,
of infection.
The Walking Dead, flesh-eating zombie.
It's so interesting that it's the outbreak in Racoon City. You know, we were working on the T-virus, something that was going to make us live forever. Nope, we fucked it up. It turned everybody into genetic mistakes. As the games go on, do you guys like the more Cronenberg-y side that it takes? I kind of like more when it stayed to the zombies or the zombie dogs, which are such an iconic look of the series. You know, those dead Doberman with almost kind of like skull faces. Or like a Nemesis, which again is like a skull face, but like a big guy.
A Nemesis I was fine with, but the more Cronenberg I'm less interested in.
Well, it becomes something different. So it becomes a different technology, something called Ouroboros in Resident Evil 4, which is a new type of something developed from the T cells that, you know, changes your body, makes you more full of like snakes and spiders and gooey ear weird stuff.
Gross
I don't know.
stuff.
Yeah,
turns you into a two-phase boss fight machine.
Exactly. Mike, do you have a favorite out of that type of different discrepancy between the two different types of zombies in this universe?
Well, to lead us in there, and then we'll jump into the game section. My preference is the first 3 games where it's horror-based and less action-based.
Yes.
That being said, Resident Evil 4 is a near-perfect game.
Yeah.
It walks the line of horror and action. I don't like when it becomes all about the action.
Leon.
Yeah, Leon.
Help, Leon.
A game that's all escort missions. Anyway, let's jump into the games because we're just running for it right now.
Yeah,
we're
let's
already
talk it.
doing
I'm
it.
excited to talk it.
Yeah, let's get it. Ayo, Normies, I have just busted out my lockpick and we are in the mansion, ready to talk.
Fuck, I'm scared as hell then.
Yeah.
It's not where you want to be.
No,
I
not-
like to be on the outskirts of towns. By the time you're getting into like the buildings, like the end game where you're like walking around and it's like, oh, these are spooky ass stairs going down to like a dungeon or a crypt. Usually I'm in that point in the game like, oh fuck, it's getting real and serious.
Right. So Resident Evil series, survival horror, generally, like we said before, following the Umbrella Corporation and the fallout of their experiments with the T-virus, G-virus, Ouroboros, etc. Trying to do medical stuff, also create bioorganic weapons, BOWs, you know, let's make military technology, why not? So the games kind of just follow the spiraling consequences of that research. The first game is centered on the Spencer Mansion, where there's a secret lab underneath it, and the S.T.A.R.S go in to investigate their Bravo team that was lost. You learn about the Tyrant, everything else. Resident Evil 2 is the G-virus, and that's in Racoon City, dealing with the police station and like the way the police chief was owned by Umbrella and covering up a lot of their experiments. Resident Evil 3 is in that city. 4, then you get Leon. And then 5 and 6 start getting ridiculous.
Like global.
A global scale thing, and that's where it loses me. And you got Chris Redfield, Muscle Boy.
Redfield,
He punches
Jill
a boulder.
Valentine. It's, you know, you're saying some great names though.
Yeah.
Just great characters. Leon Kennedy. What I love is there's a lot of mythos to the game. Just the stuff that you said. The Spencers. We're going to hear about them throughout. S.T.A.R.S, the S.T.A.R.S program. I mean, Joe, do you just even remember what that is from what I'm saying? The Special Tactical
Tactics and
Assault.
Rescue Squad.
Yeah, and Rescue Squad. I mean, that's so fucking badass.
The S.T.A.R.S were awesome.
Yeah. I love the Resident Evil universe. I do.
It is. And, you know, the first game has a lot of iconic moments. The dogs jumping through the door. There's the infamous director's cut that was supposed to be releasing all the uncensored content, but they forgot to put it in when they pressed the discs. So the box art just says director's cut uncensored,
no
but
difference.
nothing is different. My personal favorite, and this is like a piece of a noted like news is they're remaking Resident Evil 2, and that's coming out next year.
Very excited.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking niche to normie and how popular these
That's
games
true.
are,
Hit that.
if you missed out those early games, they're coming back, guys. There's a reason they're remastering these boys. They are popular as hell to old school gamers.
Yeah. And like if you are playing things like Alan Wake or The Evil Within, thank Resident Evil for that. If you like Fatal Frame even, thank Resident Evil for that, because they prove that you could make money with horror games and people like them.
Yeah, and third-person action, too.
Yeah.
This was a lot of experimentation back in the day to get that code right, to get the angles correct, the motion controls for shooting, thank God for Resident Evil.
Yeah, because that is my favorite type of video game, the third person. I prefer action adventure, but it also works in horror, but like the third person view is what I want.
So you are preferring the Resident Evil 4 Onward. Over the shoulder, full 3D camera?
No,
Resident Evil?
I just mean like
Hands
I
up
wanna
right here,
see-
I am.
So Colin likes full camera control. Joe?
I don't care so much for the camera control. I prefer third person over first person is what I was saying.
You guys are missing the aspect of why I love it, though. What do all those have going forward? Couch co-op, baby.
True.
That they do have that. And yeah, you're a big couch co-op guy too. You're a Nintendo boy too.
That's right.
I love the fixed camera angles, tank controls, because it creates a sense of horror because one,
You feel locked in.
there's things you can't see. You can't turn, like, because you control poorly, you feel disempowered, right? So even the control scheme is putting you at a disadvantage. And the graphics can be so much better because the backgrounds are all pre-rendered. So you can have like these really beautiful backgrounds that are really spooky looking for a PS1 game. The character models are all blocky.
Which wouldn't have had the power to put it out otherwise.
Right. And if you look at the GameCube release of Resident Evil 1, it looks photorealistic today. It is so great because they didn't have to spend any memory on backgrounds or 3D modeling a room. You just have a JPEG.
Damn.
And then the 3D characters, and that's it. So you can dedicate all your hardware on character models and like make the atmosphere really believable. So I like Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3 for that, where it was locked down camera. You feel at a disadvantage because you can't control well or aim.
Yeah, but see, you're even talking about remakes that stretch over to different consoles now. Again, how popular this series is and what you got to love about it is it spans over so many consoles and so many generations.
That's right. It's been on the GameCube. It's been on the Wii. It's been on the PlayStation. It's
Number 4 hitting so many Game of the Years that eventually they were like, look, people love playing as Leon Kennedy. Let's go ahead and put it on the GameCube. Let's make it the Game of the Year edition. Put crazy lasers in. Let's bring it to the Wii.
Yeah, they brought it to the Wii, and I think it was the first mature game released on the GameCube.
You are correct.
And that, is the mix of horror and action. Much like the movies were all action, the game started to follow that trend, and that's where they lost me. So Resident Evil 7, going back to this Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like backwoods family, like you're trapped in their house, we don't like strangers around here kind of stuff. It's like, I'm glad that they're going back to horror. And when you look
it
at,
scares you for sure.
Yeah, I like atmosphere. I don't want to be the superhero in a Resident Evil game. I want to be like so disempowered and so
the
frightened.
one who barely makes it out.
Yeah, I want to be barely making it, right? And then Resident Evil 7, we had that PT demo that Hideo Kojima made. It's supposed to be the new Silent Hill game. Never happened. But Resident Evil 7 feels like they're borrowing a lot of that first person, that atmosphere. Like they followed that path because they saw a big demand for the PT demo that never turned into anything.
I'll tell you the game that I most currently played, if we're just talking video games, the Resident Evil series. I've got a Nintendo Switch that I'm always fucking gushing about. I'm taking Resident Evil on the go. They dropped a package, Resident Evil Revelations 1 and 2. These were games from like about 4 years ago that they ported from like the PlayStation 3.
Okay, nice. Yeah, the Revelations. I forgot about that collection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so what is that? I'm not familiar with that collection.
It's the same. It's going to be a third-person, over-the-corner or over-the-shoulder, action-centered drama. It's the same controls as 4. You're just running around, picking up bullets, shooting people. Same customization. You're running to the merchant guy to pull out and pick up, the standard guy.
What are you buying?
What are you buying? And it's a cool story where you're centered on an island. You're a CERN type or like a disease-controlled type organization who's going around doing cleanups after disasters, and it just happens to be that something, of course, has gone wrong. I believe you're Chris Redfield's sister, but you bounce around from a number of different characters that you control. And it's a ton of fun just because I love the online play. Sometimes I will just get into a lobby and just do waves of zombies, which you can do, you know, the last man standing style. You can just play as Wesker, get a submachine gun out and just unload on zombies. I'll spend a Sunday night doing that for 2-3 fucking hours like an idiot.
Sounds like a good time to do that.
And those are like the mercenary modes and stuff too that they put in a lot of games for it. What you mentioned about the different storylines, like Resident Evil 2 did that with the Zap system where you have an A storyline and a B storyline.
And you're jumping main characters.
Yeah. So you have a Leon A with a Claire B or a Claire A with Leon's B story. And you can like leave things for the characters. So if you take the shotgun in the beginning of the game as Claire, it won't be in the locker for Leon later. Or vice versa. So the storylines are sort of connected. Which was an interesting thing to do. And I think it's one, so they could recycle environments.
Oh, for sure, because you're seeing, and this game is miserable with that, unfortunately, where you're like, I've been here 5 fucking times with 2 different characters. Like, I'm so sick of this.
But if you look at Resident Evil 1, it's the center of the mansion, and then a left wing, like an east wing and a west wing. And you're just constantly running between the east and west wing through that main atrium or whatever. So this is at least a city. It's bigger, but Resident Evil is always going to have backtracking. You got to get the key. It's hard. It's a puzzle game.
Oh,
right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Like the old ones, especially. Like you're solving puzzles, getting a key.
Yeah. You're finding this shiny object collates to this shiny thing, get through the hedge maze. I think number 4 is probably my favorite just because we never left Leon's point of view.
Yeah.
He was such a compelling character by that point. Secret Service, looking for the president's missing daughter. And, you know, when you would control her, it was always in a present situation where he would be nearby and she would just be skirting away. It's not like it was some great leap of, oh, this happened 2 hours later, 3 hours later. No, you're Leon. You are Secret Service. You are fucking getting out of there. And encountering the Ouroboros for the first time, it was refresh at the time. Now I am sick, unfortunately. All of the Africa-based games that really heighten it up just make it even sicker and more disgusting, like 5 and 6. But at the time, it was so cool. It was fresh. I really enjoyed it.
I think the opening 10 minutes of Resident Evil 4 is some of the best like game design ever.
Great cinematics. Absolutely.
Like, you just see these people in the distance. They're in the church doing something, so you can kind of look at the town. You don't know what's going on, and then they start to filter out.
Yeah. Oh, God. Tense and scary.
And you can jump out the windows when you're getting cornered. Like, you can bar a door with a dresser. Like, it's really, really cool.
Chainsaw guys chasing
First
you down,
time you see one of
speaking in
those.
scary languages. Oh.
Yeah. 4 is super. There's Matalo, kill him.
Yeah.
Right?
Now,
There's
are they
Spanish.
not making that into a movie because Paul W.S. Anderson won't let it go and that he just has to continue his Mila Jovovich stories? I don't know. But when I was a kid playing that game, I would talk to my little brother all the time and just say, this is a movie, dude. We have to make this a movie.
Right. And we'll get into that in the movie section for sure. I think we did get the final chapter of the Paul W.S. Anderson, but there might be more news on that.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's another final chapter.
Yeah.
The extra. Resident Evil extra page.
Bonus features.
Undead.
Yeah.
So have you guys ever played any of these other, because there's a lot of genres of Resident Evil. We have the third person action, we have the third person survival horror. There's also like first person rail shooters.
I have not played any of the first.
I have played one of those. I played one of those, of course, early on the Wii because that was such a good use of the motion control. And it's the same. It's a House of the Living Dead where you're just, it's, you know, thrusting you through the story and your 2 buddies going, who can get the most headshots? It's fun. I love that.
I like that. Yeah.
I really like.
Arcade.
Yeah, it's Umbrella Chronicles and Dark Side Chronicles.
Umbrella Chronicles.
And that's a great couch co-op because they play through key story points of the first couple games. So you'll play through the police station in Resident Evil 2 and be like, oh, nostalgia wave, sweet, but you're doing it in first person, shooting all the zombies. So I think they're awesome. What's interesting about Resident Evil is it created, like we said, survival horror. So Silent Hill comes out of that. Onimusha comes out of that. Fatal Frame. And they're all essentially these third person clones of this. And then with Onimusha, like a glitch in that game made them make Devil May Cry, which is another Capcom game.
Wow.
Yeah, so there was a glitch. So Onimusha is a samurai Resident Evil game. And
Going
then
against Onis, demons.
Yeah. So there's a glitch when you swing your sword, an enemy would stay in the air and you could just keep hitting them. So a guy said, what if this was the whole game? And he made Devil May Cry.
That's hilarious.
And then you have Dino Crisis, which is Resident Evil with dinosaurs, which that was also Capcom.
Played it, ate it up on the Dreamcast, loved it.
And they already made that movie, Fallen Kingdom.
Yep. That is a Dino Crisis.
So we already got
Jurassic Park Dino Crisis.
Yeah.
Let's see that movie.
We've already got, it's the last act of Fallen Kingdom.
So, how about this, Mike? I love when these characters pop up in other things. Marvel vs. Capcom 2, where you're playing as Chris for the first time. I loved that. I thought that was awesome. And then in the most recent game, where you're playing as the Nemesis character, always looks great, always cool.
He busts out that rocket launcher,
yeah, dude.
right?
And he always looks great. He wears that badass coat.
Yeah,
like,
dude.
Damn.
For sure. Speaking of like that, like there's so much to talk about. Like there's so many games. The storylines are so convoluted, right? But do you guys have like a favorite character and a favorite monster from the Resident Evil series?
I have a favorite character in general, and just thinking about it, I'm not sure if I've ever been her in a video game except briefly, but Jill Valentine.
I think Jill
Valentine.
Her mind is controlled in number 4, and I think you play as her towards the end, but I definitely don't think I've ever played as her in a game. But in the second movie, when I saw her, I just knew who she was.
Yeah.
I was like,
She
that's
she
Jill
looked
Valentine.
exactly like
and she
her.
walked out of the video game. It was so cool.
Yeah, Jill you play as in Nemesis. Yeah, you play as Jill in that one.
And she's just so badass. She seems so specialized, so skilled. She was like a Sonya Blade or a...
That's exactly what she was.
Exactly. Who's the badass chick in StarCraft?
I don't know that.
You know, who they would... Morgan, or I think who they would base those games around. Yeah, there were these sci-fi badass women that I would just be like, Jill Valentine, she's up there in that pantheon. I want to play as her.
Yeah, I mean, Jill was the main character of the first Resident Evil game as well, not just Nemesis. But yeah, she's like the badass... lady, special forces.
That beret, I mean, can't you just see it?
The beret.
The little scarf tied around her
On the
waist.
Nemesis outfit, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Mike, favorite character?
Leon's fucking
Leon's
man.
up there. He's
Yeah.
cool. I mean, he's the coolest guy in the series. The
Yeah.
haircut's cool.
And he
I mean,
eventually
everything
starts
about him.
wisecracking,
Yeah. Sure, why not?
Yeah,
At
cool
that
boy.
point, I mean, he becomes John McClane because by that point, he's saved the country 3 times, I'm sure.
Yeah. Especially when that little French guy comes out. It's like,
Yeah.
now we're getting weird. Joe, do you have a favorite character?
I like Jill. I'm gonna stick with Jill.
Everyone likes
I like
Jill.
the Nemesis monster.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean, I think
very
that's
cool.
just a really good twist for. It's like you guys said. Like I really don't like when it starts moving away from zombies.
Yeah.
And like I don't know, that just seemed like a natural progression to me, where it wasn't over the top, and it still felt in the vein of zombies.
Right. I'm a big fan of the Tyrant, the first big bad, where his heart's on the outside of his body. His left hand is a giant claw.
Oh, damn.
He's like 9 feet tall, but he's just like a humanoid dude. But the only weapon is this huge arm claw, right? It's kind of like Carnage with like a big hand. I don't know. I just think if you like horror games, you should know what these are. You should play them. And like getting the Resident Evil 2 remake is super exciting.
Yeah, and if you like action games, I mean, at this point, it's exactly the same
everywhere.
as playing some sort of, SOCOM or something
Gears of
like
Zombies.
That. Yeah, exactly. Gears of War, exactly.
Yeah. There's a couple things I want to note about like the remakes for the GameCube is like that's the best way to play Resident Evil 1. Don't go get the PS1. Just get the GameCube version. The graphics are insanely good. Resident Evil 2 is going to come out in December, so play the GameCube one now.
Play it straight through.
Play that next one. And just the storytelling's super good. Like finding the journals of people who work in the labs was really cool. Like the Itchy and Tasty guy, like he's becoming a zombie, writing these journals, and you just see how his grammar changes. And he's like, Bill came, had ugly face, so killed him. Tasty. And it's like, what happened there? He's like the groundskeeper. But, the games are mostly spooky horror. They turned into action movies, but the movies have just thrown away the horror since the jump start. So how about we go ahead and talk about the movies of the Resident Evil franchise? Paul W.S. Anderson.
Boo.
What did you do to us?
Let's hit it.
Hit it. Hey Normies, we are now stepping into the hive and confronting the Red Queen as we are talking the movies of the Resident Evil series. That's the Paul W.S. Anderson films that some have mixed feelings on, but oddly enough are the most highest grossing films based on video games of all time.
Yeah, that's because they won't stop making them.
Yeah,
and
that's
they
just
do
got
good
to be by
overseas.
numbers at this point, and that there are 7 of them, I believe.
I think it's 6.
I think there's
Great.
17.
Yeah, right. So they spent $290 million on all of them, and they made $1.23 billion. So the Resident Evil franchise as a film has made billions of dollars, or billion point some odds. But I hate them.
Just flat out
I
say
hate
it.
him.
I hate them flat out.
Well,
Yeah.
let me say this. I'm just going to list them off here. You guys just hit me with a stop when you stop seeing them in theaters.
Okay.
Can I stop seeing them in theaters?
When you stop seeing them in theaters, hit
it's
me with
gonna
a
be a
stop.
quick
Are you
list.
okay? Mm-hmm. Resident Evil. Resident Evil Apocalypse.
Stop.
Stop.
I saw them, but I stopped in theaters at Apocalypse.
Because then it's Extinction after that.
So followed by Resident Evil Extinctions, number 3. Resident Evil Retribution.
I've never seen
Afterlife.
Retribution. I
The
have seen
final
Afterlife.
chapter.
I have not seen.
I've
Final
seen
Chapter.
all of them but the final chapter. But those are campsites or rips or, somewhere.
Yeah.
These are not theaters. These aren't even rentals, though. I'm not going out of my way to get these on iTunes,
No,
Blockbuster,
it's if they
any
show
bullshit
up,
like
you
that.
know.
Yeah, exactly.
I
I
would-
loved Apocalypse. I love that seeing that in
Apocalypse, I
theaters.
think, is really fun. It is just like the game. I mean, it's exactly what I wanted from. Resident Evil 2 was the first game I played. Apocalypse felt like that to me, where the first one didn't really feel like that. to
Especially
me.
when she jumps the motorcycle into the church and backflips off it into the monster, dude. I remember doing that in the game.
Hell yeah.
But I hear what you're saying.
I
Yeah.
mean, the stars are there. The Nemesis shows up.
All
at
the characters, they
end.
do get all the characters
as
in
opposed
these
to the
films.
first one where it's like, oh, there's naked Mila Jovovich.
And
The
no
first
one from the movie,
So
basically.
the first one's a haunted house film that goes deeper
it?
when
Is
they
it
go
a
under into
haunted
the
house
government
film?
complex. Yeah, just because of the slow build. You're not sure about the survivors. It's very self-contained. By the time the special forces join them with Michelle Rodriguez, you're just kind of like, oh, well, this is just more fodder. It's very slow. There's just not a lot of people
Not a
in
lot
existence
happens in
of it.
that movie.
Exactly. And the drama of, well, we don't have our memories. So it's more suspenseful. Number 2, action. I mean, that's the video.
Yeah.
A bottled story inside a city that is self-contained where no one's getting out. And you just have wacky side characters. You have the black guy that they run into who's just a street guy on the crew. He's not somebody who's part of these special forces who are surviving. He's
Just a
just
dude.
somebody who just needs to get out of the city with his badass gold pistols. I mean, I loved that as a kid.
I thought that, having played the games, I'm like, I don't know who that guy is.
Wait a
Yeah,
minute.
see, I think you were coming at it from the perspective of like, this is not the game.
No,
I
these are
know.
just
Where I
movies
was
to
just
me,
like,
though.
yeah, these are
Right.
just random horror movies, and that was the zombie movie I wanted the first one
Yeah.
to be.
And I think they knew that because video game adaptation movies had done terribly to this
Poorly.
point. So they were
Very
like, yeah, you know what? Maybe we should just not put it so close to the games. Let's just take these characters that everybody knows their names and make something else.
Just
And
vaguely tie it together.
and regardless of how I feel, they were successful. So,
Yeah.
and
there was different advertising at the time. Whether or not I was too young to know it, I don't believe there was any marketing towards, we're bringing Jill Valentine to number 2, and she's going
I
to
don't
look
think so.
comic accurate. That was just a surprise in the theaters.
Yeah.
Again, these other characters, like you're saying, I think they were just Americanizing it. They were just saying, like, let's just make something good for the West that they'll just fucking go to the theater and see it.
we're just going to make sci-fi zombie horror movie,
Yeah.
right? You do eventually get Jill, Claire, Leon, Carlos from Nemesis, Wesker.
You get Chris.
You get Chris. yeah.
Played by Captain Cold, our absolute favorite off of the CW Flash shows. I
Right.
mean, that's fucking great. Sure.
Yeah, so you do get to see all your favorite characters eventually throughout the series, and Alice is the mainstay, Mila Jovovich character.
You wouldn't say the Red Queen is the mainstay?
all
That dumb
going-
little girl.
Yeah, that's the end quote. You're all
Yeah.
gonna die down here.
You're all gonna die down here.
I think she's fine.
She's fine.
I
But
think she's
if you
fine.
guys recall, in the future ones, you run into a White Queen at a certain point.
That's right.
In number 2, the plot of the film is that the creator of the T-Virus wants you to go into the city to save his daughter, who's the basis for the Red Queen. I mean,
Yeah.
she is a figure throughout the film.
She's like a Sherry Birkin analog
Yeah.
from Resident Evil 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You guys remember the laser scene?
It's all I think about.
I was gonna say that is legit.
I mean, it's the Mission Impossible white room suspension of its time. How many people have recreated, you're locked in the hallway, it's coming at you, you jump, or you do see the person get cubed and diced beforehand, but then the second person makes it.
Wasn't
The Cuban dice I thought was really, really
It's
good.
Blech.
yeah.
I mean, it was gross, but like
Fucking blech.
But that wasn't that in Sphere or Cube? Somebody got
something like
somebody
that.
got cubed by a
exactly.
steel fence.
Yeah.
So it wasn't an original thing, but that's a really iconic scene for sure.
Yeah.
So much so that they revisit it in like the fourth or fifth one.
Yeah,
when she
exactly.
I remember
goes
that.
back.
Yeah,
when
they
it's
go
the
back
White
to
Queen
it.
or whatever, and they're like, the trailer has it
We
be
have
like,
another one.
it's here it is again. I mean, we're literally the audience
Back
is
on our
like,
bullshit.
Shit, I know that's Resident Evil.
Yeah, I guess I know what that's right.
Unfortunately-
and when does it get to the point where she's like all in leather?
Okay,
with,
so
like,
here's
2
what I'll say.
guns,
By the point of
superpowers.
extinction, the
Right.
apocalypse has happened. If you recall, the end of Apocalypse is that nuclear bombs go off and sort of hit some of the target sites, and only the rich and powerful survive. The rest of the world is littered with the Resident Evil T-virus zombies.
Mm-hmm.
By that point, where she is just going around on motorcycles, only wearing
Like
leather,
steampunk.
and she looks dead out of Kate Beckinsale from the Underworld.
Right.
And again, side note, these are dad movies for me. I'll go ahead and say this now. Randy Brooks, my father, has taken me to see these films because he loved Mila Jovovich.
Oh, yeah.
He was obsessed with her.
Fifth Element.
He would bring up random facts like, isn't it interesting that her name's Mila Jovovich, but she doesn't have an accent? That's because German parents, she was raised on an American Air Force base. And I'd be like, oh, you are fucking... you are in love
You're
with
reading
this
her bio.
woman. Yeah, exactly. So Kate
On the
Beckinsale,
Wikipedia every night.
he's got a poster of her from Underworld in his
Oh,
office.
really?
He loved these leather-clad, gun-shooting psychopaths. And, it's in this model. Len Wiseman, married to Kate Beckinsale, director of
Yeah.
those films. Paul W.S. Anderson, married to Mila Jovovich, director of these films. Like, there is something going
Weird
on in this
correlation.
world.
Yeah, it's going to make really awesome movies for my wife to look cool as
Yeah,
shit.
I think that's what the premise comes down to of what these pictures are. They're glorified pieces of that. It's like they highlight female action in a very cool, interesting
Yeah.
way. Great, that's great, but there's a lot of bad, bogged down sexuality to it too. But I'll say the worst part of these films is, so we've gotten past the apocalypse part. The world is
Yeah.
destroyed. We're driving around Mad Max style. Now there's clones of Alice in every one of the movies. There's
clones,
6 or
Yeah.
7 Mila
dragons,
Jovoviches
there's
in them.
monsters,
There's dragon
it's-
zombies.
It's so
I
funny.
I mean, do
forgot
you
about
guys
the
like
dragons.
any of this? No.
No, I don't like any of that. Like one of my guiltiest music pleasures is a pop punk band called Bayside, and I think it's Extinction or one of these later ones. They ended up doing the soundtrack
Weird.
Oh
for
my
some
God.
reason.
That doesn't make any
And I was
sense.
like, what the fuck is this? Because I was listening to Pandora and one of their songs came up and I looked and it was off of like music from and inspired by Resident Evil Extinction.
I like the phrase music inspired by Resident Evil Extinction. Like,
it's like, oh,
all right, man, me and my band were chilling. We watched the movie and we just had to make this song.
It just happened to be playing in the background.
It spoke to me. Yeah.
Oh, get your guitar out, Jimmy.
All right, so this song was inspired by when she grabbed 2 guns. It's called 2 Guns.
a bang bang, a boom boom.
I got 2 guns, a shoot. Yeah.
So beyond that, there are films, CG films,
Yeah,
all animated
Capcom
films.
made these, right?
Capcom made these. They're called Degeneration and Damnation. They're very close to the video games in that they feature the characters. I mean, they look directly out of the video games.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're not video game plots. They pop up on Netflix occasionally. Have you guys seen these? I'll toss them on sometimes.
never heard of
No?
these.
Yeah, I actually got Degeneration on Blu-ray from Amoeba Music just because it was
Very
cheap. And I was like,
cool.
yeah, let me watch this. And it's like Leon at the airport. And so
Yeah.
there's an outbreak happening at the airport. They lock it down and just,
And they're like 60 minutes. I mean, they're pretty short.
they're
right?
short.
Like,
Yeah, they're short. Now, I didn't see the second one, Damnation. But, they were all right. It's like watching a cutscene for an hour.
It's a lot of colorful, the same thing. So when you're seeing like hordes of hands pull at people inside an airport,
Yeah.
and then 5 minutes later you're seeing the same shot, and people kind of run back and forth from side to side, it gets pretty repetitive. Is
Yeah.
my only issue with it. So it's great background noise. If you guys are big fans of the Resident Evil film series, put them on. You'll enjoy
Yeah.
it.
Or if you like the games, you might enjoy those more.
Yeah, for sure.
That's my biggest criticism with the movies is, George Romero was tapped to write the screenplay for the original one. And then I think the Japanese producers said, quote, like his script was not very good. It's like just
a
very
great quote.
matter of fact, like so we
Sure.
just didn't use it. It just wasn't in line with their vision, but like without George Romero, there's no Resident Evil.
Well, and like, what was their vision then?
Yeah, because I don't
if
think
that
it was
your
that.
vision, I don't know.
I don't think it was
know.
handing the reins to somebody who was going to glorify their wife for 10 years. You
Right.
know, nothing. There was
That's
no
a
vision.
sweet paycheck, man. Just be like, honey, where would you like to go to shoot this movie where you're gonna do backflips or watch your stunt double do
George
backflips?
Romero, obsessed with Pittsburgh. No, I'm sure they were like, no.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, I wanted the Resident Evil 1 game, but in a movie. I wanted you to go into the spooky mansion, find out there was a secret lab, face the tyrant at the end. Like, I wanted it to do that. But the first movie was just like 5 minutes in the mansion. I have amnesia. And now Michelle Rodriguez is here and she's got a machine gun. Let's
I'm like
go.
naked in a tub.
Yeah, like
What is the ending of that movie? I don't even remember. I remember being so bored when I saw
it's a rip-off of the train scene from Resident Evil 2 when William Birkin, he transforms and you're on the train leaving the city and he attacks the train. They recreate that with the liquor monster that has its brain out.
Liquor monster.
It's called a liquor, and it gets injected or something and mutates into a bigger monster and attacks them on the train. Michelle Rodriguez becomes a zombie.
Sacrifices herself.
Yeah, or sacrifices herself, and they escape on the train, getting out of the facility at the last minute. I think they regain their memories too, and that's when she wakes up. They get caught
In the
because they
city.
get up to the surface of the mansion, and then the special forces knock
and
them
that's
out.
pretty much the
She's
start
like,
of it.
my name's Alice.
And then if you recall, she walks out into the streets alone of Raccoon City.
Yeah.
Is there
Then
any
we get the
reason that
second
it's
one.
called that?
I don't know why
Is that
it's
just
called
a
Raccoon
funny
City.
American thing? It's an animal you could find over here, Raccoon City.
I wonder why it's Raccoon
New
City.
York.
Man, it's just fun, but I know I'm from Geauga County, Ohio, and Geauga means raccoon.
Oh God, there you go.
So I like to think, there's a lot of Walking Dead out there.
Maybe.
Yeah.
is Cleveland the Raccoon
Yeah, it
City?
might be.
You know,
that's what
maybe
it's based on.
if I get to be allowed to direct these the proper way, yeah, I'll just use Cleveland as Raccoon City.
Well,
I would
directing it the
assume
proper way,
from-
that would imply that there's a future for the Resident Evil movies.
Well, you got
Is
to
there?
you got to think they made $1.2 billion.
Yeah, I would assume they're going to hand over the reins to somebody to reboot this bad boy at
Yeah.
some point. And whether or not that means going closer to the video games or maybe coming up with some cool original stories and just slotting those characters in, we'll see.
I mean, it would make. Yeah, I mean, you could do it on Netflix even. I mean, if you want to do like a serialized, following many characters and just the plot of Umbrella, you could do it on Netflix and just kind of jump all over the globe with different people
Umbrella
investigating.
Chronicles. Bring it to Netflix,
Yeah,
baby.
that could be rad. Yeah, they're probably going to reboot it. Probably just fresh start because it made money and now they can't make any more because we had the final chapter.
Yeah,
Because they
and
called the last
because
one the
Mila
final
Jovovich
chapter.
is done. She is not willing to portray that character anymore.
Oh, really?
So
She
I
was
think
like,
they
"Look,
just
it's
need
been
to
a
go into a
decade.
different direction.
I'm sick of working out every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just how many times can I kick a CG dog?
Yeah, once a year I have to dye my hair black for some reason.
Yeah.
Is that what color it is now?
No.
In some of them, I tell you, it looks just like the vampire in Underworld.
I just remember at one point, like, I don't even know which movie it is, but I remember I felt like I was having a fucking stroke because she walks out all black with a big trench coat, shooting two guns, and then, like, starts doing Matrix-style kung fu,
Sure.
Yeah.
running up walls and stuff, and it's like,
Yeah.
what the fuck?
One of the final fights is her fighting 20 copies of herself. I mean,
Right.
it's like at that point, if you're the filmmaker, it's like, well, what are we doing here, Mila?
Yeah.
It's like, we're just shooting you.
I think there's a piece of broken glass, and then she kicks it, and then it bisects one of the zombie dogs vertically. Like, it's like just
Whoa.
so over the top.
Damn, that's awesome.
And then there's one time she teams up with her clones.
Yeah.
And then it's her and her clones
Sure.
against Umbrella, and like, yeah, well, enough is enough.
And there's always good actors.
Enough is enough. 6
Ali
movies
Larder, Oded Fair.
Yep.
From the Mummy series. There's just a lot of just dumb character actors who got tied to that series that I just ended up loving. So
There's a really good half in the bag where they watch all the Resident Evil films, and they brought up a good
damn.
point where essentially what Umbrella is doing is they're cloning people to throw into giant fake cities to then drop a virus to see what happens and then say, look, Russia, this is what would happen if you put this in New York. And then Russia will buy it. And then they'll show you, so it's like you're spending all this money to
these
sell the
tests.
virus.
That's an expensive proof of
But what they
concept.
said at the end of the day is, you can clone people. I think that's worth a lot more money than anything
You're going
else.
above and
Can you
beyond.
imagine being that Russian
Yeah.
businessman who's watching that just aghast little time at the end says like, wait, but could you bring my wife back from the dead? No. Do you want to buy this virus?
Yeah,
Can
that's,
if you're going to make her a zombie.
no, we contract that out. We don't own that technology.
Yeah.
That's a third
It's not
party.
proprietary. Yeah.
We could- we could-
Mr. Wonderful owns that.
We can only clone Mia Jovovich. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
What a bummer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the movies. If you like them, hate them, they're out there, they make money, they're going to make more of them, I would say.
There's gonna be a series, there's gonna be movies, so be on the lookout. I'd be willing to bet by next October we get some solid news on the Resident Evil films.
I think especially...
I don't know.
Maybe Comic-Con or something. I don't know. If Resident Evil 2, the remaster, does well...
Hell yeah.
It's nostalgia time, man. Yep. They'll probably just make the plot of the games like I always wanted anyway.
No, then maybe you'll look out and you'll get what 15-year-old Mike wanted.
That's all I want.
Like 2 decades too late.
Mom, take me to Resident Evil.
15-year-old Mike was still okay with Mia Jovovich, but
I bet he
wasn't
was.
the same thing. It
Tom
wasn't the same
Jovovich.
thing I was looking for. Anyway, let's go in and talk about some of the comics and literature tied into Resident Evil. Hey Normies, we just found the secret key and we entered into the lab beneath the mansion ready to talk the most niche of these things. That is definitely the comic books and novels associated with Resident Evil. So I didn't know anything about these things going into the research. How about you guys?
Oh, not at all, man. This is a deep dive.
This is definitely, it seems like the most niche.
Yeah, nothing too much. I'll tell you, I pretty much only had to look at one, the original 1998 Resident Evil comics that Image did.
Gotcha. Is this the Image comics, and that's the ones based on Resident Evil 1 and 2, right?
That's correct.
All right, so they have the Marvel made a single issue that tied in with the release of the first game, and that was it, one issue. Then, as you said, the Image comics, Resident Evil 1 and 2 tie-ins. Then Wildstorm ended up doing what they called Fire and Ice, and I want to talk about this because as I was looking up, in the 4th book, there's an episode where a zookeeper is having to kill all of the animals that became zombies. And at one point, there's a zombie gorilla, zombie tigers, there's a zombie,
Bear? Oh,
bear,
my.
something like yeah, right? And at the end, there's zombie prairie dogs, and that's what gets them. Zombie prairie dogs get them.
Finally represented how I dreamed they would.
Yeah.
That's what I've been missing in zombies.
So he's in the zoo, and they're like, we really need to destroy this zoo. All these animals are going to you got to kill all the animals. So he overloads the, security system and the gas lines and blows up the whole zoo, right? And then he's like, okay, all the animals are dead. I did it. And he falls asleep. And then the stinger at the end is a zombie prairie dog looming over his sleeping body like, oh, gotcha. And it's like,
why would you go to sleep anywhere near that zoo?
It's better than a lemming, though.
that's true. That's a bad call on his part, but that
Yeah.
seems like a W.S. Anderson move. Let's see if we can get the prairie dogs in the next one.
We get dragons. Prairie dogs we're not asking for a lot.
Right. Then you get the Code Veronica that was released here. It was just a translation of a Hong Kong only manhwa, which is manga, right, from Hong Kong. And Wildstorm did another tie into Resident Evil 5. A bunch of mangas basically tied into every single one of the games. There's the Marwa Desire, which 2012 to 2013, Viz Media did this translation. It's basically a prequel to Resident Evil 6, and it's about an outbreak of the zombie virus in Singapore in a high school. And then there's Heavenly Island, which this one I like. So there's a reality show called Idol Survivor, and they go to an island to film the show with all these celebrities. And when they land, it turns out there's zombies on the island, right?
Dun, dun,
It's
dun.
Deadly Island.
Is that Deadly Island? What's that? Pitch
Dead
me that.
Island, you're saying?
Or Dead Island, yeah.
It's a lot like that Charlie Booker series, the guy who created Black Mirror as well. He had a Big Brother Zombie Attack TV series that aired on BBC that was also like that.
Really? Well, this
very
was
cool.
2015, so maybe it borrowed off of that. But yeah,
Wow.
this reality crew is trying to fight them off, and then Claire comes in. So it's like a reality TV crew and Claire
And then they're following
fighting
her.
zombies,
Sure,
right?
that's
It's so
great.
dumb. But these seem like, I don't know, man.
Well, let me fill in a gap here for you guys real quick. So you're talking Wildstorm a lot when you're mentioning
Yeah,
these.
and I don't know who
I
they
am
are.
as well, so let me tell you, Resident Evil Wildstorm was the publishing created by Jim Lee. Jim Lee of DC Comics, of course, the president of
Yep.
content over there now. Wildstorm was a comic book, Wildcats, that he eventually had going. He became a partner over at Image, so they absorbed all this up. It's all the publishing through those guys there. So when he was doing all this, it's because he's a big fan. He loves Resident Evil. He
Really?
wanted to be making comics of this property.
See, that makes a lot of sense because this feels like it would be like a Titan get.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the Resident Evil franchise feels like that'd be something Titan would go for.
Oh,
But
of
there's so
course.
many passionate fans that just want to keep the mythos going. I mean, it's all there in the games. Why not expand upon it?
It's like
Yeah.
the Metal Gear fan base where there's such this convoluted storyline of like
And you're like, what do you like about
Wesker
this?
is a clone, and then he was working with the. It's like, what the hell, you know? And the police chief was in on it, but not totally in on it because Wesker had another plan, and then he went to Spain.
Ridiculous.
Anyway, but people are into that. And if you want to explore that, what I am familiar with though, they made these novels that are like novelizations of the game plots, and these are written by S.D. Perry, and she's like a sci-fi fantasy author, and she's done tie-ins for Star Trek Deep Space Nine, original series, Aliens, and Predator. So, like, she did a lot of these tie-ins, and she wrote these books that I read as a kid. And a lot of them are just recaps of the first game, the second game, the third game.
Some supplemental material,
Right.
I'm sure, really builds it out.
Yeah, you know, or it's just, you know, the main plot of the game retold, but I read those. But one of them that was original, the characters are going through these 4 different artificial environments. They're like trapped by the bad guy, and like, oh, you have to fight your way through like a fake desert and a fake city and a fake... And that was used in the movie.
Yeah, that's almost like the...
Where they have Tokyo. Which movie was that in? It was in Retribution. They called it the planet, and they were fighting in Tokyo, Russia, and it's like that was where their testing zones were to show to Russia instead of selling clones. So I
Mike,
think
how dare you name Retribution like you can tell any of the later movies apart?
I had a note, so I had it written down. But I just think that's cool that idea got pulled from the book, and then they just used it in Retribution because I thought that was pretty cool when I read it, but. Other than that, the books are just retelling of
Yeah.
the game. So
and
if
the
you're
ones
into
that
that,
I did,
get in
the
there.
5 issues, 1998, Resident Evil, like you said, just builds out 1 and 2. It just fleshes it out. It fills in the chapters. And Jim Lee does the covers for each of these. So if you like his art, guys, you're going to love these comic
yeah,
books.
if you're a fan of Resident Evil and comic books, that's kind of like the
what
best
are the
thing you
odds?
could ask.
Yeah, that's probably the best, unless you really want to
Yeah.
read some weird mangas.
And this is the guy who comes up with Batman's look in the New 52, and he's drawing Jill Valentine for you. It's like, ooh, I'm in heaven.
Yeah, get in there. Other than that, those are the comic books for me. I mean, Resident Evil, in my mind, it's a game, and
Yeah. Were you reading these books when you were a kid?
The novels I was
Just
reading,
the novels.
Yeah, I was reading the novels, not the mangas, and I did enjoy the novels a lot. I had all of them like on my shelf, like, yes, these are the classics.
It's the classic.
You know, like there were some of my prizes. I had to
Scott
own them.
Fitzgerald, Resident Evil Outbreak.
Yeah,
The
yes.
book's based off of the video game. I
Moby
love.
Dick, Resident Evil. Yeah,
Got them all.
got them all. So anyway, if you really are a huge Resident Evil fan, you want supplemental, those Resident Evil 1 and 2 books, some of that did get retconned to not be canon, but if you'd like to see a quasi what could have been, because some of that was canon for a time before they retconned it. So
Oh, how did they go about the retcon then?
they just decided, no, what you said in the comics didn't, like, so the comics were spanning the gap between 1 and 2 and a little bit after 2.
And they were like, "No, we got
Well,
that."
eventually
Yeah.
the games want to cover that stuff, and when it contradicts,
See,
they
that's
say,
Yeah.
kind of the
"No
problem
way."
with doing like supplemental material when it's a video game series. It's like they're gonna keep making games. You fill in gaps that, eventually are gonna get filled in regardless.
Yeah. But check it out, normies. You know, if you're hungry for more, why don't you take a bite out of these? Let's hit the wrap up, guys. Hey, yo, normies, I've got the rocket launcher. I'm on the roof, and I'm ready to pull the trigger on this tyrant and wrap up a Resident Evil.
Toss it down to me, Mike. Throw me that rocket.
Tossing the rocket.
Bang!
Got him.
Oh, I guess I was the tyrant there.
Oh, sorry.
I didn't realize.
It's all right. So, Resident Evil, guys, final thoughts on that? Anything? I mean, there's so much to cover, honestly.
Yeah, we didn't mention it yet. Outbreak, I believe, is the original title you were saying, right,
Oh,
Mike?
sorry, Biohazard.
Biohazard. I'm sorry. No, off the top of my
Yeah.
head. Biohazard, the original Japanese title, opposed to Resident Evil. And I read that one time that Resident Evil sort of implies original sin. It's the evil inside your soul still. That's why they wanted to call it that. I think Outbreak's a much better title.
Oh, Biohazard.
Or I
again.
did it again. I got that on the brain. I think Biohazard's a much better title.
Yeah, they did have
It's
Resident
less
Evil
catchy.
Outbreak, though.
Oh, you think so? I could see a franchise. I could see a horror series based on that, or movies. Biohazard. Damn, like where has that been?
Yeah.
It sounds a little generic, I think, is the issue.
Just
Fancy
imagine.
radiation suits.
Yeah. Imagine the start screen, though.
Biohazard.
Biohazard. It's not as good as Resident Evil.
I like both of your guys' voices.
We're in the Halloween spirit right now.
That's right.
For me, Resident Evil was at its best when it was spooky horror. And the action stuff was bothering me. I like where Resident Evil 7 is going, but even the end of that gets all quirky. So we'll see. But
Video games are very hands-on now, Mike.
Yeah.
I don't know if the future of these will ever go back to that. It's all, I mean, look at it again, something like God of War. It's so interactive now
Yeah.
opposed to quiet storytelling.
Why don't you pitch me your dream Resident Evil game moving forward?
It's
If
called-
you got to design one, what would it be?
I guess it would be called the Resident Evil 2 remaster that's coming out.
In December? Boom.
Mike's very easy to
So
play.
I'm set. Yeah, I want what I wanted when I was 15. Yeah, Resident Evil, super iconic, zombie craze. I mean, inspired every survival horror game after it. I mean, that's it.
Yeah,
So-
these wouldn't be mainstream without the original niche of Resident Evil.
There wouldn't be Dead Space without it.
That's right. And so the Normie stuff, the movies, and probably you've heard of the franchise, even if you haven't played them. I think most people. What do you think? More people have seen the movies or played some of the games?
Oh, more people have definitely seen the movies.
Yeah, that's what I bet
fuck,
too.
you think so?
Oh, 110%. Dog, they made $1 billion off those
Yeah.
terrible movies. I think a lot of people just would be walking by and be like, Resident Evil, okay, that sounds
Yeah.
scary.
I just remember GameStops and PlayStation magazines being so full of Resident Evil merchandise, for the first game, the advertising geared towards it, where it was like, wow, I know what that is, even though I'm not playing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's you get
Phenomenon.
6 movies, 20-some games. I mean, yeah, it's a brand name. Even if you haven't played it, you know what it is. Niche stuff, definitely in the comics and the books. But if you like spooky zombies, play the GameCube version. That's my biggest recommendation. Play the GameCube
What a weird
remake.
old recommendation that is. That's so
But it's
niche.
so good. It's just the remake of Resident Evil 1 with the graphics look better than PS4 right now, I swear to God. If you look at that game right now, it looks incredible, and it's scary, and it's the best experience. They added on more content. There's an extra spooky boss fight.
Jacob just
Great.
brought his old GameCube back from visiting home, so we got to see if we can track down a copy.
I might have my
Damn.
copy.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say, should
could
we
put
jump
those
on
two together,
Amazon?
yeah.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I never had a GameCube, so I wouldn't mind checking that out. And I'm
It's
excited for the remaster too.
Yeah, if you play the first one, then check out the Resident Evil 2 remaster. But that's my recommendation, period. If you want to get into the series, that is my entry point. And then Resident Evil 4 after that. And if you like the action, do those ones. Colin, final thoughts.
I love the series. Again, growing up, when I went to the movies, it wasn't like, oh, that's the Resident Evil movie. So do I want the next ones to be more towards that? I do. I always want stuff to go towards the source material and honor it. I just try to think about how you would make it mass appeal. So I hope there's more movie content. Maybe a TV series would just be easier. It would just be easier to flesh out. 'Cause there's so many characters to this universe.
You can
So
just do
honor
bottle
all of it.
episodes.
Yeah.
Save on budget. Oh, we're trapped in the lab today.
Yeah, and as
Make
we
the
mentioned
first
in
ever
our
bottle series.
Yeah. Oh, that'd
True.
be interesting. As we mentioned in our last episode, anthology horror is the future. So is Resident Evil inside that? Who knows? I don't know. Question mark going forward about what they're going to do with this property, but I'm excited to see.
Yeah, I would definitely slot it in for anthology horror. That's already what the games are.
Yeah. How about you, Joe?
I mean, I would like to see a return to form for them. The movies get so out of hand that even as a horror fan and a video game fan, I'm just completely uninterested by the time we get to the last 4 of them. So I would like to see something way more akin to the first 2 or the games in general. And I'm a big couch co-op guy. I would like to see something like Resident Evil 2 remaster, but with couch co-op.
Yeah.
Which, we're not going to get. But, taking a lot of the action-adventure elements from 6 with the couch co-op and putting it in a more Resident Evil 2 Racoon City type environment would be my dream.
Yeah, just get me back in the city. And I forgot to mention in the game section, there was the online game. It was called Outbreak, I think. It was PS2, early
That's what I'm
online
obsessed
days.
with.
Yeah, and you could play online with people. It was very weird. Like, different characters would have a better hiding stat, so the zombies would ignore them if they go into a locker. Other people would have combat stats, unlocking stats.
I don't think that's the future.
No, but you would have a party of 4 people,
Yeah.
and you would all try to get through the scenario. They were like these chapter scenarios, so you'd have to work as a team to open the doors and fight the zombies and stuff.
Well, how about some haunted houses? How about some events? I mean, there's
that'd be
a
cool.
Universal Tokyo.
How about
They do that at
yeah.
Universal Tokyo.
Okay,
yeah.
good, yeah.
Vive
Biohazard.
headset.
Biohazard, yeah.
Vive headset, full 4D.
That was the remember Resident Evil. Remember the failed Silent Hill pitch that they
PT.
made as well too. PT. Yeah, let's do something like that, Joe.
I
You're
would love
absolutely
that, yeah.
right.
Well, Resident Evil 7 is a lot like that. I hear the VR version is like very immersive and very,
Very
good.
scary.
So keep
Wow.
going in that direction for sure.
That would really do it for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's just in general, like we talked about, the future of horror video games is really embracing, like horror movies embrace new technologies and they've advanced CG and practical effects. Video games for horror genre got to do the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I got this scratch on my leg and I'm starting to get really hungry. I don't know. It's weird.
You look a little green, Mike.
Yeah, I think I might need to go lay down. So, thank you, Normies, for listening to this episode of Normies Like Us. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram. Check us out. Share
Yeah.
us on social. Thank you.
Happy second week of Halloween. Keep listening to our Halloween special episodes. And, of course, let us know what you think. Let us know any suggestions you have.
Yeah, we got lots of more spooks and scares coming for you this month, so don't miss out.
Yeah.
Oh, Mike, your mouth's foaming.
Oh, jeez.
Mike, why don't you just look at the flowers for a minute?
Well, all right, over here.